Hi everyone! With this presentation, discussing tips to complete your group project, we begin our journey exploring improving health in Chicago neighborhoods through addressing social and environmental determinants of health. In public health, as many of you experience already, we often and ideally work in coalitions. To simulate this important method of professional collaboration and this important method of ensuring community voice, we'll explore this project in groups. We've carefully used your meet and greet bios to form 11 groups, 4 to 5 students each, with like-minded interests but with diverse experience. Let's begin. To find detailed information about this group project, we've created its own Blackboard site accessed on the main course menu. Each group has their own site also accessed on the main course menu, as you see here, marked by the lower yellow arrow. And then this upper yellow arrow marks where you access the group project page once you've reached this group project site. This is where you check in and then you can meet your group mates. Group pages are the place to at least start group communication. From there, it'll be essential to come to an agreement about the most effective way to communicate moving forward. We've set up your Blackboard site with a Skype tool within Blackboard. It's called Blackboard Collaborate. However, you should decide the method that's most efficient for your group members. You're welcome to use Collaborate, and you're welcome to use the discussion boards, and that way it is a bit easier for us to check in to see how things are and to see how things are moving along, but at the same time, we hope that you find the way that's most efficient for each group member. Because regular communication is the key. So taking some time to work out the best communication method for each group member collectively is important. It might be Blackboard Collaborate, email, text, Google Hangout, or some groups may be able to meet live. As you delve into this group project, be sure that you take some time to consider keys to success that's posted as the second item on the group page. Some other important group work concepts, like emotional intelligence, might be useful to explore as we go through this group project journey together. What's this group project all about? Let's start by taking a look at the objectives. Upon completion of this group project, you'll be able to apply the concepts we've been discussing since Unit 1 to social and environmental determinants of health in a specific geographic community area of Chicago, while paying attention to equity and social environmental justice. Next, you'll be able to identify community assets that can potentially be deployed in managing or mitigating health risks associated with identified social, environmental, community hazards. And finally, you'll be able to function effectively and collaboratively on a work task group to develop key social and environmental determinants of health communications regarding the health of a community population. This is a 5-step project with 4 due dates, since steps 4 and 5, a written summary and final infographic, are due at the same time. Please be sure to closely abide by project guidelines, and you can see here on this slide the timeline, as well as the points for each step. A good place to start is by taking a look at the data using some of the resources on the group project site that I referenced before in regard to assets. You're of course welcome to use other sources as well. As exemplified in this Chicago community area map, on your infographic, be sure to clearly show where your community area is located within Chicago. This community area depicted on this map is the near west side, where our School of Public Health is located. Before we dive further into these tips for the group project, here's a little bit of background about Chicago's 77 community areas. In the mid-20th century, sociologists at the University of Chicago took the hundreds of census tracts and aggregated them into 77 larger areas. They defined these areas by using water. There's a lot of water in Chicago, even though it's not on a coast. Railroad tracks, major streets, and green space, as well as observe socio-demographic clustering of populations and neighborhoods at that time. Now take a look at the 77 community areas defined by the Child Opportunity Index in this map. This is an indicator that you'll use to select your community area for your project. The west and south areas of Chicago suffer the greatest health inequality. But inequality, as you see here, is dispersed actually across the city. It's equally important to note that these areas identified experiencing great inequality also experience many assets and resilience, something that you'll be looking at and including in your community for your group project. Community work should be guided by community assets. What are some examples of assets in a community? They can include nonprofit or NGO organizations, small businesses, economic development organizations, schools, faith-based institutions, libraries, neighborhood organizations, community health coalitions, local parks. What else? What assets in a community have you worked with or have identified? No one organization can represent the rich diversity in any given community. Use this slide and this map as a jumping off point to begin to identify your community's assets. Also use the resources on the group project page. By considering the resources in a given community and health intervention being driven by community assets, we begin to understand the social capital of community. In your projects, understanding and exploring the social capital of your community and its impacts on health in your community will enhance your final assignments. Refer to this figure from the World Health Organization to consider the social capital that exists in your identified community. Maybe the community select will be in a social capital building phase to which your project may contribute. As one of your final products for this group project, you'll be developing an infographic. For starters, be sure to include a descriptive title at the top of your infographic, as you see here from this example on the left-hand side of the slide from the APHA. No references on the infographic, but of course they will be used in your second final product, which is a summary document. Be sure to include your community area and target population and a brief description of demographics and key health status indicators. Address the social, health, and environmental issues of interest. Don't forget about what we mentioned before about situating the community area within Chicago, as you saw in the previous slide. Create text boxes or images, or both, for each the selected social determinant and environmental determinant. Define, include a brief phrase as to its significance for your population, and include a public health action to mitigate its effects. Finally, include an additional image and text box for the community assets that we were talking about earlier that you identify for your target community. Focus on 2 local organizations that can be mobilized for public health advocacy and health promotion. These organizations can contribute to the reservoir of social capital in the community, as we were mentioning. These local assets that you'll identify are to be considered as potential partners, but not exclusive partners. Please use just one image and or text box for each of these topics. Also, be sure that you use comparative data for the city or Cook County as a whole. Be choosy about how space is used and don't overwhelm your audience by making it look cramped and busy with too much going on. And then be sure that you closely abide by the assignment guidelines, as I mentioned before. And you'll also prepare as a final project a summary document. Again, be sure to closely abide by the assignment guidelines on the Blackboard group project page. We've actually included a template for you to use as you prepare this document and to submit. The 7 requirements that you see here on the left-hand side make up this final summary project. Please note, number 2 here is not included in your content outline, which is step 2. So we want to make sure that you remember to then go back and include it in this final summary project. And of course, the APA style in-text citations and references are required here. Follow instructions for the types and number of references you need from the guidelines. For this group project, you should be thinking along the lines of health equity. Groups are exposed differentially to opportunities for well-being and hazards and risks in the social and natural environment. You should also be thinking of community social capital, as we mentioned, but also resilience. How can local assets promote social connectedness and sense of community? And how can assets facilitate collective action to improve opportunities to enhance community well-being? These are things you should think about as you develop your projects. Finally, upon completion of the group project, we ask that you submit a self and peer evaluation based on these 6 criteria. Use this evaluation to reflect on the process. This evaluation will be used for participation points, so be candid in your thoughts. In this group project, and really in all of our public health work, to strive for equity, we must be courageously radical and innovative. We must join together with others as a force for change. With that said, we look so forward to what you come up with. Please let us know of all your questions or concerns, and thank you very much for listening.